Hi, True Colors attendees. My name is Qwin Mbabazi, and I'm the Community Engagement Manager at LGBTQ Legal Advocates and Defenders, commonly known as GLAD. If you do not know GLAD, we work to end discrimination against our community by changing laws to be more fair for LGBTQ people. Today, I'm here with two attorneys from Ropes & Gray, one of the law firms GLAD partners with on our LED project. In 2016, our ID project kicked off, and it offers free legal help to transgender people across New England who want to update their names and gender on their state and federal documents. You can contact our ID project on www.glad.org/ID. That is www.glad.org/ID. Now, I want to let Nicole and Becca introduce themselves, and then we'll go through some questions on how to update your name and gender.
Hi, Qwin. Thank you so much for having us today, and welcome True Colors attendees. My name is Becca Newman. I'm an associate at Ropes & Gray. I work in our Chicago office, and I've been working with the Project Validate project and the GLAD pop-up identification name change process since the beginning with the firm in October 2017. I'll let Nicole introduce herself and then give you all a little bit of background about Ropes' involvement in this project.
Thank you, and thank you, Qwin, and welcome True Colors attendees. My name is Nicole Karatzis, and I'm an associate at Ropes & Gray in our Boston office. I have been a volunteer with ID Project since I started at the firm in the fall of 2018. Super happy to be involved, love the project and the people I get to work with both inside and outside of the firm. And I'll let Becca give a little bit more of a brief history about how the project came to be.
So Ropes also began with this project with GLAD in late 2016, which was obviously a pivotal time as a lot of the rights and abilities of transgender individuals were going to be thrown into question with the political changes and environment. Since then, over 1,000 clients have applied for and received some type of assistance through this project. We're very excited that that number continues to rise and attorneys continue to volunteer. We've had almost 300 attorneys within just our firm work with this process, and I know that there are other firms that GLAD partners with as well. It's been a very valued partnership of the firm. We're grateful to be able to use our resources and our capacity and pair those with GLAD's know-how, connections, and all of our shared passions for helping clients. Beyond helping clients just through the name change and document amendment process, between our shared resources, we've been able to take on bigger, more macro issues. So for example, helping parents who have transitioned be able to obtain their correct name on their child's birth certificates. So it's been great that as we've evolved, and unfortunately as some state and federal regulations have devolved, that we've been able to use all of our resources to try and meet the challenges facing clients, including you.
Wonderful, and thank you so much for being here, Nicole and Becca, and thanks to True Colors for hosting this virtual conference. So shall we get started?
Definitely. All right, so before we get started, just a couple of notes. So first, we'll cover the name change process in Connecticut, as well as specific processes within Connecticut to state documents, including driver's license, identifications, and birth certificates. We'll also cover some federal documents as well, including social security cards and passports. And as good attorneys that we are, we just want to offer a brief legal disclaimer that we are not providing direct legal advice. We just want to get you this information, and we'll reiterate this a couple of times. If you do feel like you're in need of more targeted assistance, we have resources to be able to do that for you.
Sounds good, and I am ready for some questions.
Sounds great.
So how do I legally change my name in Connecticut?
So if it's all right with you, Quinn, I'm just going to go over, again, listing what documents that we can do, just so, because it's even broader sometimes in a good way, what clients can do. So the first process is we're to do your name change process first. And Nicole will go over how we can do that in Connecticut. That's important as a matter of order, because that will be important for changing other documents. Then after doing that, you can update your federal documents, including your social security card and passport. Again, the name change is the predicate to being able to do those documents. After that, you can look into doing your birth certificate if you'd like, as well as state IDs. Beyond that, there are individual considerations, including updating your health insurance, if there are any life insurance, student loans, etc. So we can do that on a case-by-case basis as well through the pop-up ID project.
Yeah, so as Becca mentioned, the legal name change is kind of the pivotal first step because it's the foundation on which the rest of the state and federal identification documents can be amended. And I'm sorry, there's a fire truck going by right now. So I can do that again, but as Becca mentioned, the legal name change is the first pivotal step in amending state and federal identification documents because it's the foundation on which further amendments can be made. So the legal name change in Connecticut, and as Becca mentioned, we're focusing on Connecticut, but the process will vary by state. So if you're in a different state, you can definitely reach out to one of the resources that we're going to offer throughout the course of this Q&A, or reach out, go check your local government agency's websites for the process in your state. In Connecticut, you need to file a petition for a name change, and along with said petition, provide a copy of your birth certificate. If you don't have one handy, or your parents don't want to give you the copy that they have to use, you can always order a certified copy from the Registry of Vital Records. There's a fee typically associated with that. And if you are going to go through the process of ordering a birth certificate, it can't hurt to order more than one, so you can use it for subsequent forms and applications to amend names or genders. You'll file the application along with your birth certificate and 2 forms of identification in your local probate court. To figure out which probate court is the one you should be applying in, you'll want to check based on your county which probate court serves you. And typically the probate court will have a website where you can check hours, phone numbers, especially given closures during these uncertain times. You'll want to call ahead and make sure that probate court is open and currently accepting these applications, because a lot of courts have limited their functions to essential functions only. The fortunate thing in Connecticut is that you don't have to publish the fact that you're changing your name in a local newspaper. This, again, varies from state to state. So some states do require publication. There's typically a process for waiving publication if you are in one of those states. And again, resources as well as your probate court's website should be able to provide more information on that. And the fee for Connecticut is around $225. Last time we were able to get a citation on the amount. There again are fee waivers that can be applied for. Just check your local probate court's website, or talk to reach out to one of the resources that we will refer to throughout the course of this Q&A. Finally, if you're a minor, you can still change your name, so that's great news. In Connecticut, parental consent is required, but if both parents do not consent, which happens, all you need to do is provide the judge with an explanation why both parents are not consenting. I think that's it for changing your name. And once you get the court order approving your name change, again, we would advise that you request a couple of extra copies of that, certified copies from the court, because as we mentioned, proof of your name change is going to be foundational for subsequent applications and forms. So having those copies handy and ready from the get-go will streamline things a lot.
Thank you. And what are the requirements for updating my name and gender on federal ID documents like a passport or social security card?
As we've reiterated many times now, the first step is going through your name change process. And as Nicole mentioned, it really is ideal if you can receive multiple court orders so that if you give it to an agency and they don't return it to you, that wasn't your only one, it doesn't slow the process any further. So for your social security card, which you can update after your name change order, and we recommend doing, and it's actually necessary to do before other steps in the process, you'll use the legal name change, and you'll also need to submit a physician's letter that just attests to you going through this process. And thankfully, you can use a form letter that does not have to be very specific to your individual transition, which is less invasive, and we have found success with that. So it does not need to be very detailed or a medical history or anything like that. Normally, we recommend that you apply in person at the Social Security office. It can be a very fast process if you go in person. Of course, right now, that's not an option, and we first and foremost advise you to think of your safety and the public health before you go into any type of office. You can apply via the mail. If you do so, we recommend that you keep records of when you submitted documents, when you mailed things in, so that if things get lost in the bureaucratic process, that you have records to be able to say, hey, I did this. And also make copies as well, so that if you do need to go in person when we're able to do so, you have all the documents again. Second, you can update your passport. It's a very similar process as well. There are two very preliminary forms to sign. And you will need proof of citizenship, unfortunately. That can look like different forms of it. Attorneys through the project can advise you on that if that becomes an issue. But that can be an unamended birth certificate or a passport as well. And unfortunately, right now, no federal documents will permit you to choose a non-binary gender marker at this time. And we'll go over that a bit more when a non-binary gender marker is available.
And I'm gonna piggyback off of Becca for a second. I forgot to mention during the legal name change process that you do have to provide a reason for requesting the name change. And fortunately, we found that courts are really receptive of vague general reasons. So you don't need to go into a lot of details. You don't need to provide a detailed history. Simply say, this is the name I use, or this is common usage, and those reasons are sufficient.
That's a great point, Nicole, and thankfully that's one that really holds across the board for all Connecticut processes as well as federal. Do not feel like you need to be very descriptive about when they ask for a reason. It can be very superficial, and we encourage you to do so as well. There's no reason to have an invasion of your personal privacy by giving a detailed reason about why you want to undergo this process. However, if you feel that that is part of your process to answer with more details, you can do so.
So what are the requirements of updating my name and gender in Connecticut on a birth certificate?
Yes, so fortunately, amending your name and gender on a Connecticut birth certificate is possible. Unfortunately, there are some states that still prohibit this process, but Connecticut is not one of them. Again, the rules vary state by state, so you'll want to check with your state first, and it's the state where you were born, not the state where you live, if they happen to be different. So in order to amend your name and gender on your birth certificate, first and foremost, you'll need a certified copy of your legal name change, which ideally we've already gotten. You'll need a copy of your birth certificate. Again, ideally you've already gotten this, but if not, you can request a copy from the Vital Records Office. In Connecticut, there's a packet you can request from the Vital Records Office that will allow you to complete the packet and send it back in in order to request your amendment to the birth certificate. A notarized affidavit from you, the petitioner, will need to be completed saying that you want to request this amendment, as well as a notarized affidavit from a licensed physician. Again, despite the language in said packet, your physician does not need to go into too much detail. Simply say that the petitioner has had clinically appropriate treatment is the reason for requesting the amendment. There are definitely examples online or examples that you can get from Project ID that you could provide to a physician, provided they're comfortable filling it out, or a lot of physicians have forms that they already use that again have the appropriate and necessary language without going into too much detail. So provide the 2 affidavits, a copy of your birth certificate, a copy of the legal name change order, and a photocopy of valid photo ID, and submit all that to the Vital Records Office. There's a particular address to use that can be found online, and I believe it's a $30 payment for the amendment. And again, once the birth certificate has been amended and updated, you'll request the amended birth certificate for your records.
Does Connecticut provide a non-binary gender marker option for my driver's license or state ID?
Yes, this is actually a very exciting recent development that as of the beginning of 2020, you can select a non-binary gender marker on your driver's license or state ID. It's right on the form for requesting a name change, as you would do if you're changing your last name. It's right on that form, male, female, non-binary gender marker. So we'll talk about the potential implications for selecting a non-binary gender marker later. But to secure a Connecticut driver's license or state ID and to go through the name change and gender amendment process on that, you will need your updated social security card, as well as, yet again, a court order to your name change. And that's why this is one of the last documents that we suggest updating, because you'll need to have your updated social security card as well. And minors will need an affidavit from their parents to update their state ID or driver's license.
And I should mention that updating your social security record is free. One of the few things free in life.
Very true.
So if I use a non-binary marker on my driver's license, but can't select that for other documents, will that cause any problems that I should be worried about?
There are definitely implications for having what we would call mismatched markers based on having an X marker on your Connecticut driver's license or state ID and federal documents which only allow for male or female designations, as well as your birth certificate in Connecticut, which still only allows for male or female designations. These are just things to be aware of and to consider when making the decision whether or not to choose an X marker on a state or driver's license ID. Some of the implications can be dealt with in real time, but it's just important for folks to know that these may be things that they deal with throughout the course of their schooling or employment or marriage or adoption. These are just a number of the forms that either because they're federal or because states haven't made things consistent across all forms of identification, where mismatched gender designations could cause extra delays or have potential issues. For instance, even in Maine, where X markers are allowed on state IDs and driver's licenses, marriage certificates still only have a male or female designation, even within Maine. So come time to apply for a marriage certificate, one, you need to provide proof of ID. I'm assuming, and things still need to play out a little bit, that a Maine clerk issuing a marriage certificate in Maine will absolutely accept a Maine driver's license. But nonetheless, you will need to choose a designation on the marriage certificate. Which designation you choose is up to you, but just something to be aware of by having the mismatch between some forms of ID, some certificates, and other forms of ID. In the context of employment, because a lot of employers have to report numbers about their employees to Equal Opportunity Commission, as well as other federal agencies, a lot of employers are still reporting based on male-female designations, and therefore on their internal paperwork, they may require an applicant or a new employee to choose one designation and not recognize an X marker. When again, the prospective employee or new employee would be providing a state ID or driver's license as proof of ID.
Yeah, and I just add in here, obviously this is a newer opportunity and consideration. So if this is getting you really excited about beginning the name change and document amendment process, right now you can do so. And you can also, while you're going through some of the preliminary steps, apply to go through the pop-up ID process and be assigned an attorney volunteer. We can really talk through some of the potential legal implications for having mismatched gender markers. And we can also match you up with someone from GLAAD who can talk about what really is most authentic to you. Having matched gender markers, or if you really feel it's authentic and you're okay with that there could be some hiccups along the way with mismatched gender markers. So don't feel like you have to have all the answers as you get started. You can get started with the name change process, and we can advise you as you go along and have these different questions.
Do I have to be minimum age to update my documents? What if I'm under 18? Do I need a parent or guardian's permission to make these changes?
Thankfully, Qwin, we've worked with individuals of all ages going through this process, including minors and young minors. Parents' affidavits or parents' authorization sometimes is required, as are hearings for the name change process involving a minor. However, we have worked with, in other states, judges and courts to help a minor through the name change process if parental consent is not easily accessible, or if only one parent consents, the other doesn't, if one parent's in the picture and the other is not, a variety of situations. So we don't want people to feel discouraged by saying yes for some processes. For the name change process and document amendment processes, you will either have to have a parental affidavit or a parental signature. Those are matter of course, and we can work with you if you're ready to go through this process and don't necessarily feel like you can meet those components.
They did mention other states. What if I do not live in Connecticut? What if I live in another state?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's plenty of resources online. You could either go to GLAAD or apply to work through the Project ID or Pop-Up ID project to provide resources and guidance on what the process is in your state and your county in the case of name changes. Additionally, online resources like the local government agency's website, whether it be probate court or the vital records office in your state. A lot of them have a lot of great resources online, linking to the relevant forms, laying out steps of which documents need to be provided along with the forms. And there's a lot of great resources online that lay out state by state rules and steps, such as the National Center for Transgender Equality. And Google is going to be your friend here. And if there's something that you can't figure out online, absolutely feel free to reach out, to GLAAD or a Pop-Up ID project for extra help.
Do I need legal assistance to do this, or I can do it by myself?
As a matter of course, yeah, sorry, Qwin. As a matter of course, no, you do not need an attorney to begin this process or to complete any of these forms. You can do this independently. And typically when attorneys assist a client through the name change process and document amendment processes, we will not sign things as attorney of record simply because we don't need to. You can do this yourself, which is great. If you're experiencing complications, delays, have questions, then we are obviously there to help you through as much as we can. Legal research. We've had obviously almost 4 years of attorneys doing this, so have a good wealth of knowledge that we can pull from. And of course, GLAD is a phenomenal partner in being on the front lines and understanding what new changes mean. But the simple answer is no. You thankfully do not need an attorney to guide you through this process. And thankfully, most of the forms, especially in Connecticut, are pretty user-friendly to be able to do it yourself.
So where can I go if I need or want help?
So there's a lot of great resources online. You can come through GLAD and apply to be matched with an attorney at Pop-Up ID Project. You could go to GLAD for questions and answers. Trans Equality, transadvocacy.org. Again, the National Center for Transgender Equality. Any other local nonprofits in your state that focus on LGBTQ issues should have great resources to answer any questions you have about this process.
And I'd also just note too, I think this is a question weighing in all of our minds is what is the COVID impact on these processes? Unfortunately, like most questions at this time, we don't have a concrete answer. A lot of courts are closed. However, some courts have moved to accepting electronic filings. So while we know that and again, as we've advised before, please always think of your individual safety and public health before going into a court, even if it is open. There are going to be some delays at this point in time, and that's why we really recommend that you make copies of documents that you're submitting, and that you also just keep track of when you mailed something in or emailed something in, so that you create your own paper trail. But unfortunately, we don't have great insight into how COVID is impacting timelines for securing name changes. And we will, of course, provide as much information as possible as we learn.
And if you're facing any other legal issues or please feel free to reach out to us at GLAD, www.gladanswers.org. We offer free and confidential information and resources, and everything that we have just mentioned is all free services, so please reach out to us. And that's all that we had for today. Thank you so much, Nicole and Becca, for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy to help.
Colors.
And be well.
Yes, most importantly.